It's Hump Day. You know what that means. Time for the Southern California Writers Association Hump Day Book Tour. I'm your host, Maddie Margarita, here with Diana Pardee on tech. Every Wednesday at 10 a.m., the Southern California Writers Association turns our Facebook page over to a new writer to talk about their books and their work. This morning, we are pleased and lucky enough to have David Putnam with us this morning. Hi, Dave.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Oh, guys, you are always welcome. You're like one of the tribe, so you're always welcome. I'm going to tell everybody a little bit about you. Dave is the best-selling American writer of crime fiction, thriller, and mystery novels. He is best known for his Bruno Johnson series. During his law enforcement career, Deputy Dave Putnam worked primarily in California on teams for patrol, investigations, SWAT, narcotics, street level and majors, violent crimes, criminal intelligence, internal affairs, and the Detective Bureau. He rounded out his law enforcement career with a few years in the Hawaiian Islands as a special agent, part of a real-life Hawaii it says what, Hawaii 50, but I'm pretty sure that's supposed to be 50 team. Am I right?
Right.
I'm hearing the music in the background. He's now retired from law enforcement and spends his time growing organic California avocados and writing with his wife and their quirky pack of dogs. So good morning again. So how has this pandemic been treating you, Dave?
Well, it was hard to get used to at first, but now I'm kind of like it. I kind of like being holed up, writing and reading, and that's what I do. So it didn't affect us that much.
It always amazes me. So what is your total book count right now? Published and unpublished.
Let's see. In 2014, I was at book number 38 when I sold the first book. So I'd written 38 books before I sold book number 36. And I wrote 2 books conservatively every year since. So I'm right about 50, 55, something in there.
So when you said that first part about writing 38 books before you sold your first book, I heard tears and the sound of writers jumping off cliffs. So thank you for that. That was encouraging. Putting a little extra something in their coffee. So tell us a little bit about the Bruno Johnson series and why you decided to write that and where Bruno came from.
I tried to get published in a number of different avenues. I tried young adult, mystery, fantasy, sci-fi. I was just trying to get published, and not till I shortened I write by 4 C's: conflict, complication, crisis, conclusion. And not till I shortened my conflict did I hit it with the publisher. And it was the first in a series. I didn't know it was going to be a series. Bruno Johnson is an ex-cop, ex-con, and he champions the rights of children. He rescues them from toxic homes in South Central Los Angeles. He couldn't do it when he was a cop because there were too many laws and regulations. So now he goes outside the law to rescue the children. And that's the theme that runs through all the books. The first book, The Disposables, I wrote 4 in current day: Disposables, The Replacements, Squandered, and The Vanquished. And then I kind of beat up Bruno emotionally and physically in The Vanquished. So the publishers commented that she didn't know how I was going to bring him back. So I decided to do a trilogy of prequels, which ended up being a quartet. So Bruno Johnson is 48 when the current series starts, and he's 24 when the prequels start. Ruthless is the 4th book in the quartet, and it ties all the books together in the series.
So tell us a little bit about the story in Ruthless and how difficult was it to write?
That was the most difficult one because it had the most emotion in it. When I wrote The Disposables, I loaded up the background of Bruno with all kinds of different conflicts to give him some flaws and some interest, 3-dimensional characters. So in the prequels, I came back and I pulled those stories forward. And the Ruthless is the last book before Disposables starts. So in Disposables, he's on parole, working in a liquor store, and he just got out of prison for 2 years, and his his ex-boss had shot him in the butt when he arrested him. So he has all that going on when the disposable starts. So Ruthless picks up where he ties everything together. So his daughter has overdosed on narcotics, and his grandson is missing. And at the same time, Bruno is working at a sting where the federal government has put forward money to buy stolen property from crooks. So there's a storefront that's open, and Bruno is a runner. He goes out and gets crooks to come in and sell the stolen goods at the sting. And at the same time, from an earlier book, The Heartless, a judge, a good friend of his, is murdered. So it all ties together at the end in Ruthless with the sting, the murder, his daughter, and the grandson. It's all tied into one bundle before it ends.
So what made you decide to make Bruno an African-American cop?
Well, again, people read for emotion, and conflict is emotion. So I try to put as much conflict as I could into the first book, The Disposables. And when I went out to work South Central Los Angeles, I went out with from the jail to Street with a African-American deputy who became a good friend of mine. And I saw the added conflict that he had to deal with working in that environment. So I thought that it would be a good to add that emotion to the books, and that's why Bruno is who he is. Bruno Johnson was named after my best friend's girlfriend's dog. Her name was last name was Johnson, and the dog's name was Bruno.
So everybody be careful around Dave, because you're likely to end up in one of his books. How much of, and I know we've talked about this before, but how much of your experience as a police officer, law enforcement professional shows up in your books?
Quite a bit. In fact, at the end of each book, there's an author's note, and I've had a lot of people comment about how much they enjoyed the author's note. It explains the genesis of the story and what is real and what isn't real. So in each book, I try to put something that actually happened in my career. The Innocence is about my time as a narcotics cop in South Central Los Angeles. The Reckless is about when I was working bank robberies, following bank robbers around. So each book, I try to put one segment of my career.
Have you written one about your time in Hawaii?
Well, Hawaii was interesting because they didn't do law enforcement anywhere close to what we did in California. So it was a lot of fun, but there wasn't a lot of conflict going on there because everybody had the aloha spirit. My first investigation was an assault. I worked it up and got a warrant. I told my boss, I'm gonna go kick this guy's door and take him to jail. And he goes, whoa, we don't do that here. He looks at the calendar and he says, call him up and have him come in on Thursday. That's when the bus is gonna be here. So they just called their crooks up and they came in and turned themselves in and they drove them over to the jail. So where's the conflict there?
Yeah. back to California, back to the mainland.
Yeah.
So
the book I'm working on right now is the first book in Costa Rica. I've set it in Costa Rica, but it's book 11. So the publisher, The Sinister, comes out in February, and that's going to be book 9. And that is the first book that comes after Vanquished in current day. And then I pick up and I brush Bruno off and get him. So it actually happens 2 months after the Vanquished ended. And then the next book after that, the one I'm working, the publisher's reading it right now, is The Scorned. And that one also is a California book. And then the book I'm writing right now, The Diabolical, is the Costa Rica book.
Is there a publisher who can keep up with you, Dave?
No.
No, I mean, you are, and we were talking about this before, you are so prolific, and brave, not only in your law enforcement career, but I mean, I knew you were brave as soon as you said, I decided to write a prequel. I don't know very many authors who do that. And then not only did you write a prequel, you wrote a quartet of prequels. So I know that there are no rules and laws in Dave's writing land. So tell us about some of your other books that I know that you continue to write the Bruno series. So, but you write other things, and you said that you wrote all kinds of different genre before you actually published it with the. Would you consider this a thriller or a mystery or mystery
The
thriller?
one that the agent has out is called A Fearsome Moonlight Black. And the title comes about because in the dark, under moonlight, blood looks black. So I decided I've tried to write an autobiography 4 times, a memoir, and I couldn't get it to work. So I wrote the first half of this book, and it's a story of how the innocence of a cop is lost on the street, and how the job affects the cop and not the cop affecting the job. That's the theme of the book. And then the second half, I added, it still continues on being real, but I add fiction to it to hold the whole thing together in a one plot. The one I'm working on right now is an African-American girl, 13 years old, and she's deaf, and it's set in 1962. I'm having a lot of fun with that one.
Wow. So tell us how you, I guess, because we've known each other a long time, I love this story. Tell everybody how you started writing.
Well, I was an avid reader, and I'd keep books in the back of my cop car, my undercover car. And when I was on surveillance, I would, when we're down and someone's got the eye and we're just waiting for some movement, I would read books. So it was the best of both worlds. They gave me a gun, a fast car, and let me play cops and robbers. And then I got to read novels on the side. So I was on a surveillance out in the middle of Mojave Desert of a meth lab. And I was down to my last book in the backseat of the car. And it was a sophomore effort of the first book that I loved. So I thought it was going to be good. But what happens so often is the author will write 10 or 15 years on one book, get it published, and then have 1 year to write the next book. So a lot of times, many times, a sophomore effort falls below standards. And that's what happened with this one. And it was horrible. But I read it all the way through because I was a captive audience. And I thought that I could do better than that. So I started writing my first novel in the front seat of my undercover car. And my first 4 novels were written by hand on 4 legal pads. Each book was 4 legal pads long. And that's what started the whole mess of writing.
Well, and you not only is that a great story, and we talked about how prolific you are. You have a very disciplined writing schedule. You're a very disciplined writer. You want to talk a little bit about that?
I believe that you got to write. For me, I have to write every day in order to keep my skill level up. And I write a minimum of 1,000 words. It's usually 1,500 words. But I get up and I go back 20 pages and I read forward editing because I want the same language, syntax, cadence as I do when I start at the end and continue on with 4 more pages. And I do that every day, no matter what. If I miss a day, I feel guilty. And that's the way I write 2 books a year. But I write to a strict structure by the numbers. You know, there's 4 C's, there's 5 things a scene needs, there are 3 components of voice. And every time I start falling back, and I never get stuck because I go back and I look and see where I fell down on those numbers. So if I come up against the wall, I go back and I say, oh, right there, I missed one of my 5 things the scene needs, and I would bolster that up and then continue forward. So that's how I write 4 pages a day through structure.
That's amazing. So what can a reader expect when they pick up a book written by David Putnam?
I write a thriller structure instead of a mystery structure. So I try to make it move very quickly and pull you to the next chapter automatically. So hopefully it'll be a book you can't put down, and sometimes there's grittiness, there's family. A lot of readers like Bruno's father, Xander. There's children, dogs. I put a lot of dogs in it lately. Humor.
Well, it sounds like your life there, Dave.
Yeah.
Dogs, humor, yeah, family.
family. And there's always, I try to put a theme, one theme and two plot lines that run parallel. And so then I do scene sequencing where I jump back and forth so I don't get plot line fatigue. So it'll be motivation, action, reaction, and three scene sequences. Then I'll jump over that theme as I touch it with those sequences and go to the next plot line. And then I weave it back and forth like a braid until I get to the end. I bring everything together at the end. So hopefully that'll pull the reader through.
You know what amazes me? Listening to you talk about how you approach your writing, it's amazing to me how emotional it is on the page, because you're so disciplined in your approach to writing, but there's so much emotion on the page that someone listening to you talk about writing might be surprised at that. So I think you are a very complicated person, David Putnam.
Thank you.
Your prose isn't half bad either. So great prose. I love your prose. So
I'm not a prose master, but I tell a good story, I think.
Yes. Yeah, okay, great. Well, we'll go with that. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, where can people find your books, Dave?
In bookstores.
Okay.
Oh. No.
The kind of humor you can expect in your books. Okay.
DavidPutnamBooks.com is the website. Any independent bookstores online. It's in their digital, their audio, hardcover, and paperback.
Who's doing your audiobooks, Dave?
The publisher. They interview the people, and it's literally out of my hands. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Okay. All right. Well, great. We'll keep an eye out for your books. I think, in answer to my own question, anybody who's looking for a book that moves with a great plot and characters that you're going to love and invest in would be very happy with the David Putnam book. So on that note, I'm going to leave everybody. Thank you, Dave, for being here. Always fun. And I want to thank everyone else for being here. If you enjoyed this book shot and looking for more like it, you can find them on the SCWA Facebook page or our YouTube channel, which is SCWA Writers Online. So until next Wednesday, please stay safe and we'll see you soon.